Hello everyone, and welcome to this week's Motor Trade Radio podcast. Powered by Motors, the driving force behind multi-site advertising. With Philip Nothard and Curtis Hutchinson, bringing you all the chatter that matters.
Well, you know what, Phil, we're going to have to keep the chat to a minimum this week because it's been a busy old week for the car retailing sector, hasn't it?
It has, yeah, and we're trying to catch all the stories as they become available, but we're not going to catch them all, unfortunately, this week because they're landing as we're talking, I think, at the minute, Curtis.
Yeah, we've just added a breaking story which will run right at the end of this week's pod, and we're keeping an eye on the various feeds whilst we're recording this, because certainly with what's happening in America with the tariffs which were announced as we record this, it was announced last night. Anything could happen between now recording this and going out on Saturday. So we'll try and keep it timeless, but a few days is a long time in the Trump administration.
It is, and a lot going on. So to start off with a few shout outs, and this last week I had the pleasure as chair of the Vehicle Remarketing Association to host the members meeting at Cox Automotive's Buntingthorpe operation there. But essentially, we were focusing on the AI technology in the remarketing space and trying to, having a panel discussion with operators in that market around, where does AI sit within that vehicle inspection and appraisal market. Which was a good conversation, quite interesting, really, in terms of the output of that conversation, Curtis.
Yeah, and I noticed that Motor Trader picked that up and ran a story on it. So we'll put a link to that story in the newsletter on Monday. But it looks like that was quite a sort of lively and informative debate that you had there on AI.
It definitely was, yeah. And the other thing we announced at the members' meeting, which I'm really proud of, to be fair, Curtis, and I'll do a shameless plug here.
Here we go.
Yes, sorry. But the partnership and collaboration between the Vehicle Remarketing Association here in the UK and CARA, which is the European Remarketing Association, with Lewis, who chairs that association over in Europe there. So we've come together with a memorandum of understanding and an agreement there that to sort of share best practice, share expertise, do joint webinars, events, and going forward. So it was a great opportunity to announce that at the members meeting last week, and look forward to that collaboration going forward.
Yeah, and that is very important, isn't it? Because we do seem to be thinking increasingly on a sort of global basis. So the more that more intelligence, the more insight that comes out of Europe and vice versa is really good for the industry, isn't it?
It is key, yeah, for definite.
Yeah. So on today's pod, we'll have an extract from our interview with Jeremy Yea from CAP HBI. And Jeremy's discussing March and Q1 trade values. So we'll have an extract after the headlines, but the full interview is available now on your podcast feed.
Yeah, do definitely check that one out, because there's a lot of detail in that conversation with Jeremy on the full interview there. But the other thing to watch out for, and this is an exclusive interview with Motors, Barry Judge and Phil Jones, with a big announcement following last year's acquisition of the Cazoo brand, the purchase of the Cazoo brand there that they did last year. So, when you think, next week that will be available on your podcast feed, do stay tuned for that. Keep an eye out for that announcement next week.
And also on this week's show, after the midway break, we've got this month's top tips with Ian Goldbold, industry consultant and digital guru. And Ian's talking about maximising the final weekend of the month and quarter and reviewing used car pipeline stock for April. So very, very topical. So do stay tuned for that.
You're listening to the Motor Trade Radio podcast, powered by Motors.
Headlines this week come from BBC News, AM, Car Dealer, Motor Trader and Motor Trade News. We'll start off with a look at March's trade values from Cap HPI's Jeremy Yea. Then after that, we'll take a look at President Trump announcing 25% tariffs on car imports to the US, and we'll look at the impact that will have on the UK and Europe. We'll also look at how Chancellor Reeves' spring statement failed to provide any stimulus to the UK car retailing sector. So we'll have some feedback and commentary from the car retailing sector in that. Then after the break, we'll look at the disconnect between workshop readiness for EVs and EV buying intent among consumers. And we'll finish off the show with a roundup of this month's senior people movements in the car retailing sector, including a welcome return for an industry legend and friend of the pod. Can you guess who that is, Phil?
I certainly can. Saw him only recently.
Yes, but you'll have to stay tuned to find out who that is.
You're listening to the Motor Trade Radio podcast, powered by Motors.
So first up is that extract from our conversation with Jeremy Yea talking about March.
So, as always, let's start off with the headline trade value number at that 3-year 60 point, which we know is zero, but let's have a look how that compares with previous Marches and a bit of the detail behind it.
Yeah, sure. So, as you said, it's ended up flat overall, which is a really good. I think it really, highlights and backdrops a really stable market overall. It didn't actually move for the entire month. So we finished our deadline in February, the last few days of February, moving into the new, our new month, sort of 3-4 days before the end of the actual month. And it was at zero and it's stuck at zero. It was welded to zero all the way through. So I think that really highlights the stability for the entire month. And that's against a seasonal drop of 0.2 since we started Cap Live back in 2012. So, it is on the stronger side of what we normally see. I think if you put that into some sort of context away from the seasonal average, if you look at last year, last March Cap Live values from March into April monthly, it dropped 0.1. In 2023, it's actually slightly went up about 0.5%. But I think it's more interesting when you look back to pre-COVID in terms of sort of normal seasonality. It is either side of either just behind 0% move or just ahead of a 0% move. So, I think it falls more in line more with familiar or more seasonal activity and results, which I think is really good for the market.
And I guess, thinking about, we're talking, just saying that at the end of the first quarter, at the end of March now, and obviously we'll eagerly be waiting what the new car registrations look like for March. But what about how does this first quarter look? What's your feeling around this first quarter, and what does the numbers look like for this first quarter of the year?
So the first quarter for this year is increased by, this is plate uplifts excluded, so not the January plate uplift and not the March plate uplift, so just raw movements, if you like. It went up 0.3 overall, according to the first 3 months of the year, which again really provides that stability in the market. And what I think I've been repetitively talking about stability, and we've run out of words to, I guess, describe a stable market, to be honest. But that's exactly what it's been. Again, put that into context. Last year went up 0.5% over the first quarter, which again is obviously quite a strong year. But that was off the back of a relatively good 2023. 2023, so the beginning of 2023, that went up 1.6%. Previous to that, and obviously we've had those COVID affected years, we have had some over 2%, even almost 3% back in 2021. So and it's if we go back to 2019, what we would consider, we're benchmarking to a more normal year, that went down 2.2%. So I think there's case in point in terms of, look, pre-COVID, 19 was over 2% drop, and now we're at state of inflation for the first quarter, but driven by lack of volume and desirability and what have you.
Well, I think, Curtis, we mentioned it right at the start there about the devil in the detail, and we talk about it every time we have Jeremy on. But I think clearly, from a flat movement of March into April, which really doesn't tell you the story, does it? There's a lot of detail behind that headline figure.
Yeah, surprisingly so, actually. And in the full conversation with Jeremy, I did actually point out to him that when I heard that it was a flat month, 0% movement, I did wonder how they'd fill the editorial, but the editorial is incredibly detailed. So as Jeremy says every month, there are so many moving parts. So I do urge you to check out the full editorial, which is available now on cap-hbi.com.
Yeah, I think Chris Plum, has mainly written the editorial with support of Jeremy and the rest of the team there. But I think he's taken like a duck to water, I think, following Derren's move and Chris taking over. So congratulations, Chris, with that editorial. But we'll get over to this week's headlines. And as Curtis said there, we're heading over to BBC News. And just to caveat this a little bit, this is on Thursday the 27th. We are recording this, so things can change very quickly. But the headline is that Trump announces 25% tariffs on car imports to the US. And this kind of created a lot of activity as people went to bed or woke up in the morning, depending on where you are, to this announcement. And they come in fairly swiftly on the 2nd of April, so that President Donald Trump has announced the new import taxes of 25% on cars and car parts coming into the US market, saying that this will take effect on the 2nd of April, with charges on businesses importing vehicles starting the next day. Taxes on parts are set to start in May or later. So it's quite a big announcement, this, and I think we've got to be careful how we talk about this, because things can change fairly swiftly, can't they?
Yeah, definitely. And it is worth checking out the BBC's coverage, because they are updating it on a regular basis. But it does highlight the US imported about 8 million cars last year. So it does show the scale of the impact that the tariffs will have, because if they imported 8 million cars last year, that's a big number, isn't it? And that accounts for about $240 billion worth in trade and roughly half of overall sales. So, the massive effects here on Mexico, Canada, but further afield, South Korea, Japan, Canada, and particularly Germany, which is something that when we spoke to Philippe Munrose from JATO just a few weeks ago, because we did ask him about the likely impact of tariffs on European producers, and he singled out Germany and Volkswagen in particular. It's their biggest global market, and they will be hit hard by this, won't they?
Yeah, and I think this is the bit now that, the obviously the rhetoric coming out of the Trump administration is build better and bigger and look after the US market, etc. But from all accounts, the big US manufacturers aren't really that supportive of this sanction, because of, obviously, there's a question around their supply chain and what they're reliant on in terms of import into the US market from Europe and other marketplaces. Obviously, they are global manufacturers. They're not just US manufacturers, they are global manufacturers. And straight away, I think the share prices fell. I think General Motors slid by roughly 3% straight away. And there's reports that both Jeep and Chrysler, obviously that sit within the Stellantis brand, fell by 3.6%. So it's not quite the all US support as you may think. And I think there's even reported in the BBC release there that even Elon Musk went to X, went public to say that Tesla would be affected by these measures, and that the tariff impact on Tesla is still significant, because at the end of the day, yes, they do manufacture products in Tesla, but they don't manufacture all their products in US there, do they? So yeah, it's quite an interesting one, this one.
Yeah, and you mentioned supply chain, and there's an absolutely brilliant graphic within the BBC story, just showing how pistons are typically originated for US car production. So the powdered aluminium starts life in Tennessee. It's turned into rods in Pennsylvania. Then it's exported into Canada, where the rods are shaped and polished, and then they're exported over down to Mexico for assembly into pistons before heading to Detroit, where the pistons become part of engines within the plants there. And I think in the initial reports, the suggestion was that parts from Canada and Mexico would be excluded from tariffs. But I've certainly read a report in the FT this morning which suggested that they would be imposed. So it's a fluid situation, this one, isn't it? And things could change and change quickly. But I guess for the UK, it's significant for Jaguar Land Rover. Is significant for Mini production in Oxford, as well as Rolls Royce
Potentially Nissan as well. So
yeah,
there's a
yeah,
few. I think as you say there, we've got to be careful with this one because half the time some of this is used for negotiation tactics to get something back from those marketplaces. So as you say there with Canada and Mexico, what will they use to negotiate potential better deals on other supply into the US there. So again, as you say there, Curtis, very, very fluid. And as always, we'll include the link to this press release on the newsletter on Monday morning. And as you say, the BBC are constantly updating this to ensure that it keeps up with the latest announcements there from the US. But heading over to Motor Trade News, and we'll talk about the damp squib of the week here, that everybody was eagerly awaiting for this spring statement, not budget.
I was nervously waiting, Phil.
You're thinking of pensions and triple lock, aren't you? Thinking about this, yes, exactly. But spring statement, so it's not a budget, and the headline is that spring statement 2025 missed opportunities for automotive, saying it's come under criticism of cost increases and lack of EV incentives. EV was definitely left out in the cold on this one, but nice little write up here, sort of the views from both the BVLA and Sue Robinson at the NFDA.
Yeah, definitely. And Sue Robinson from the NFDA does make a couple of important points, because she says, it remains the view of NFDA that raising those employer national insurance contributions by 1.2% to 15% will significantly increase the cost of running a franchise dealership. So I think the NFDA were certainly hoping and certainly lobbying for some change there, but that change didn't happen in this spring statement. And she went on to say that furthermore, the spring statement did not provide an update on the electrification of the UK car park. This transition provides a huge economic opportunity for the UK, and the government needs to be incentivising consumers to purchase a new vehicle, which will drive growth in the UK economy. So, as you say, there was nothing in the statement to clarify anything on EV incentives. So we are basically where we were.
Yeah, we're still waiting for the outcome of the ZEV mandate consultation. That's not been announced as yet. And Toby Poston from the BVLA says that today's spring statement failed to acknowledge or address the uncertainty and lack of confidence surrounding the electric vehicle market. So again, everything seems to be playing against the transition to EV rather than supporting the transition to EV, unfortunately. So yeah, bit of a damp squib this week, Curtis, on that one. But let's hope we'll cheer you up a little bit. So we'll be back after this break with the this month's top tips from Ian Goldbold.
You're listening to all the chatter that matters on Motor Trade Radio, powered by Motors, the driving force behind multi-site advertising. This is your weekly one-stop shop for all the biggest car retailing headlines from across the media. Available on demand, wherever you are, on your podcast feed. Next up is car retailing industry guru Ian Goldbold, sharing his top tips on how to steer your business to success.
Well, here we are, the final weekend of March and crucially the end of Q1. Dealers are reporting a strong used car quarter with stock turn exceeding 12 and a corresponding reduction in days to sell. However, sourcing stock remains a challenge. That said, it's the end of March and franchise dealers will have received an influx of part exchange vehicles. By now, dealers and buyers will have been reviewing pipeline stock, determining which vehicles will be retailed and which will be sent to trade, and identifying those requiring an MOT, those that have 2 keys, and any other improvements to maximise the profitability through the trade channel. Vehicles being retailed can go to market with coming soon images, but images may already be available from the original valuation, enabling them to be listed early and sold at the most profitable point within the first 14 days. And I'm sure we'll see many a used car event over the next few weeks. With these being the final days of March, there may be some pre-registration activity. Speed is essential to bring these vehicles to market promptly. They should be prioritised in your used vehicle list and reviewed weekly, rather than being parked at the back of the dealership and forgotten about for the next 90 days. These vehicles should be promptly featured on your website in a dedicated nearly new category, promoted as featured listings on your search functionality and advertised across both new and used marketplaces, and supported by a meta catalogue campaign as well as targeted ECRM activity in April, and promoted via cancelled fleet order, delivery mileage only, and saving against RRP. On site, they should be positioned in the most high traffic area of the dealership, ideally near the entrance, with clear windscreen messaging highlighting the saving against RRP. Taking these tips on board will help you finish the quarter strongly and set you up for a fast start for Q2, whilst mitigating risk to potential overage vehicles. Have a great weekend, finish Q1 strong, and I'll see you all again next month.
Well, you can't be more topical than that, can you, Phil? I mean, that's absolutely brilliant. An absolute masterclass in 3 minutes from Ian Goldbold on just getting everything in place for that, as he says, the last weekend of the month, of the plate change month, but also the quarter.
Yeah, and ties in, interestingly, with the full interview with Jeremy Yea around that last minute activity, the registrations and everything else. So again, fantastic insight there from Ian Goldbold on thinking about getting the best from your market. And as you say, you can direct him on LinkedIn or you can email him through motortraderadio@yahoo.com if there's anything that you want Ian to focus on specifically in his monthly top tips. Give us a shout and we'll certainly liaise with Ian to ensure he does deliver the right content for you, as always. Now, heading over back to motortrader.com, and this is the bumper study identifies disconnect between dealers' readiness for EV after sales and customers' plan to go electric. Now, I know you were involved with this release, Curtis, but this is on the Bumpers Automotive After Sales report for 2024-2025, and it found that 92% of dealership workshops consider themselves prepared for EVs and hybrids, whilst just 15% of customers currently own one, or just 13% are planning to purchase one in the next 3 years.
Yeah, it really is highlighting, as it says in the headline, the disconnect between dealers' readiness and what consumers are doing. And of course, this is a sort of recurring theme, isn't it, on the podcast about EV uptake. So I think what it shows, and bearing in mind that this research, it polled the view of over 4,000 car owners and over 500 service advisors to really look and identify some of the operational challenges faced by service departments as well as consumer pain points. So it's a big piece of research, and it's actually available now. It's available as a free download. So we'll put a link to that in the newsletter. But yeah, as you say, it really does show this disconnect now. And there's interesting comment here from Daniel Christie, who's head of sales at Bumba, who says, as legislative pressure grows on car makers to sell higher proportions of new EVs, the study shows how dealers have moved to invest in their workshop operations by tooling up and training for EVs and hybrids. However, there is this disconnect between what dealers now have in place and the EV ownership and buying intent of their customers.
Yeah, definitely, and as you say, they're worth having a look at the report. A lot of detail in the report there, so do have a look at that when you get a chance. Now, heading on to movers and shakers within the sector. Now, what's been happening recently in terms of those leadership roles, and the first one we're heading over to AM Online, and this is that the Stellantis veteran James Taylor takes MD role at rival Carver. Now this is that James Taylor, who's, as we well know, has been 20 years with Stellantis, really more known within that Vauxhall brand as the managing director. But he's gone to a competitor, hasn't he, after his departure from Stellantis and Vauxhall?
Yeah, we actually covered his departure from Vauxhall probably a month or two ago on the podcast. But yeah, he's popped up at Nissan. So he's got the top job at Nissan. And James will be familiar to many listeners because he was with Vauxhall for so long, 25 years, and working in fleet sales. He was remarketing director as well, and then sales and marketing before heading up Vauxhall as managing director from 2022. But yeah, this story confirms that he's now been appointed as MD of Nissan in the UK. So a good move for him.
A great move there, and a great opportunity for Nissan there in the UK. And sticking with AM Online, and this is that Santander Consumer UK it formally appoints Adam Goldhagen as CEO. Now, obviously, I knew both Adam and Vic Hill, and he was, I think, deputy CEO, I think, when Vic was the CEO. And this is a move that is a fantastic opportunity there at Santander, isn't it?
Yeah, because Adam, he's got extensive experience of Santander Consumer UK, having worked within the group for 15 years, including his time as chief exec of Santander Consumer Finance's joint venture with PSA. And talking about the appointment, Tim Hinton, chair of Santander Consumer, said Adam's extensive experience together with his proven ability to drive our company's transformation make him the perfect choice to take Santander Consumer UK forward. So yeah, he's been doing the job on an interim basis, but this is now confirmation that he is the new CEO there.
Yeah, congratulations, Adam, on that one. A great opportunity and a significant appointment. Now, heading over to Motor Trader, and this is that Brayley's car founder, Paul Brayley, retires after 20 years with the group. And so in January, Brayley's appointed Jose Bianco. Yeah, did I get that right? I think I got that right.
I think it's Jose
Bianco,
yeah,
as its new CEO, replacing Brayley, who took on the non-exec director role on the main board. So a big move for them, isn't it?
It is, yeah, and Paul Brayley. I mean, he's been a brilliant operator over the years. I mean, I've had the pleasure to meet him a couple of times, and certainly when I was at Motor Trader, we did a big cover feature on him and his business. So it's worth just recapping briefly that he set up the business in St Albans in 2003, and it was very much a soulless Honda business back then, but it's grown by a series of acquisitions over recent years. So the group now represents Nissan, Kia, Mazda, Renault, Dacia, Hyundai, and Suzuki. So, growing from that sort of core of Honda, I mean, it still represents Honda across the home counties. And also, they acquired a number of Nissan sites from Westway Nissan last year, and the business that Paul founded in 2018, he sold a majority stake to the Dubai-based AW Rostamani Group. So it's I think after that, maybe he was looking for an exit plan, and that's come to fruition. So brilliant achievement there, establishing the group and growing it. So we really do wish Paul well in his retirement.
Yeah. And another movement as well is Derren Martin, who you'll know from the midweek CAP HPI updates as editor as valuations director at CAP HPI, left at the end of last year to pursue a consultancy career himself, but he has taken on a role on a consultant basis with Picasso, the vehicle intelligence business, and obviously this is that we know that Derren Martin set up Gold and Black, or Black and Gold consultancy. Obviously, previously, as I said before, previously the director of valuations at CAP HPI, and he's taken on this role with Picasso to help them build their proposition, aren't they?
Yeah, and it makes perfect sense. This is on a consultancy basis, and certainly with his background, Derren will be conferring on things like valuation and forecast methodology and accuracy, as well as liaising with customers to showcase Picasso products. And collaborating with industry bodies. So, a great consultancy role there for Derren. And Picasso, listeners probably be aware of them from certainly the background there with Kazana. The Kazana business was acquired and put into Picasso, and they're working very closely with Motors as well, which brings us on to the final story of the week, which landed just as we started recording, and Car Dealer broke the story, and the headline is Daksh Gupta is back in the motor trade after taking chairman role at car dealer Hendy Group. Now, you and I, we were delighted when we saw this one, weren't we? Because it's been frustrating having Daksh outside of the industry. I mean, he's still very, very active on X and LinkedIn, so it doesn't feel as though he's been away, but he's well and truly back now, isn't he?
He is. And just to caveat some of this, I think we were kind of always speculated that he would return in some capacity within automotive. I think clearly this is a big move, and a big move for the Hendy Group. So, as you say there, he's been appointed as non-executive chairman at Hendy Group. He will combine the role at the car dealer group with his day job at the building firm Hughes Gray. And in a move which adds a wealth of knowledge to Hendy's already vastly experienced top team. So there is a big move for them with this appointment to the business there. And his appointment at Hendy comes as part of a major shake-up of the outfit's top team, which will continue to be led by founder and CEO Paul Hendy, but also who I know very well, Michael Buxton, who was the reason I came to join Cox Automotive, who was the president of Cox Automotive. He's also taken on a role within the business as well.
Yeah, and there's a nice quote there from Paul Hendy saying, "These appointments seriously strengthen the main board and build on a fantastic platform. The motor retail sector is at a point of inflection, and we are taking important steps to ensure the group remains agile and ready to maximise new opportunities that present themselves." So very much future-proofing the group there. And there is a comment from Daksh Gupta who says, "I've known several of the Hendy family and shareholders for many years, and I am honoured to be asked to take the role of non-exec chairman. The group is 166 years old in 2025, and I have long admired its culture and growth story." So good to have you back, Dash.
Big future there. And I spoke to Duncan McPhee recently as well, who's recently appointed last year. I think it was October time last year. He took on the COO role, the Chief Operating Officer role, and he did say there was quite a lot going on within the Hendy group, and to watch the headlines. So yeah, congratulations, and Dash, you're always welcome on the podcast. You only need to give us a shout. We'll hopefully catch up with you soon. It was great to see you at the car dealer event recently as well. So that's a busy week in the old headlines there, Curtis, and I will guarantee we've missed some. Yep. I will guarantee there's some big stories that will hit before this goes live at 7 o'clock on Saturday morning. But yeah, hopefully we've covered a lot there. But as always, do check out the full interview there with Jeremy Yea. A lot of content, and definitely towards the end of that chat with Jeremy, we talk about what his expectations are into April, what he thinks we'll be looking forward to for the month of April in terms of used vehicle values. And if you want anything covered by Ian Goldbold, please do drop Ian or ourselves a note, and we'll certainly see if we can get that covered as well on the top tips updates.
But that's a wrap for this week's show. So many thanks for joining us on the Motor Trade Radio podcast. Until next week's Suppliers Special with Motors, it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from him.
Thank you for listening to the Motor Trade Radio podcast, powered by Motors, the driving force behind multi-site advertising. We'll be sharing all the URLs from this week's headlines on Monday morning. To make sure you receive them, just subscribe to the free newsletter on our LinkedIn page. Just search Motor Trade Radio Podcast.